Saluti a tutti, and welcome to this episode of Ciao DMV, Italian-American Life in the DMV. My name is Joseph Barone, and I will be your host. This podcast channel is dedicated to all things Italian and Italian-American in the DMV, aka DC, Maryland, and Virginia. My focus is on the Italian-American experience, from family stories to little-known history to businesses to cultural events, etc. Today, I am pleased to present my interview with Natale, Lino Stracuzzi. Lino grew up and lived almost his entire life in the DMV, but is currently living in the Philippines with his wife and child. I met Lino about 3 or 4 years ago at an event sponsored by the Lido Civic Club, and during our conversation, one of the things he told me was that he had run for delegate for the District of Columbia on the Green Party ticket. It gave me a chance to speak with him not necessarily about his views, but more about running a campaign, especially one against a well-known incumbent. Of course, running as a candidate does not pay the bills, and therefore, like all of us, he had a regular job. Now, before we go any further, as we will be getting into a bit of political conversation, it is important to state that the views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by Lino are his own and do not necessarily represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of Ciao DMV. With that, I bring you my interview with Natale Lino Stracuzzi. Lino, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
So, Lino, let's start with a couple of very basic questions that I ask everyone who joins my Ciao DMV podcast. Where is your family from in Italy?
My father is from Sicilia, which is a town called Fiuminenese. My mother's Barese from Bari, which is part of the Puglia area of Italy. Most of my
I'm sorry.
In Bari, most of my summers are spent in Bari.
Okay. And do you still have relatives there?
Second and third cousins, yes.
And do you keep in touch with any of them?
Yeah, I just spoke to my cousin Marianto the other day.
And Marianto's where, from Bari or from Sicily?
From Bari.
Bari, okay. And so you grew up here in the U.S., and where did you grow up?
I grew up in Prince George's County in Hyattsville first, and then Riverdale, and then moved to Montgomery County later on.
Okay, so you're a local boy.
Pretty much, yeah.
Excellent, excellent. And where did you go to school?
I went to Beacon Heights Elementary in Riverdale. I went to Sligo Junior High and Montgomery Blair, and a little bit of Montgomery College.
Okay, great. So tell us a little bit about life growing up in an Italian family. What were some of your favorite traditions or customs to do?
Well, more or less, I mean, every Sunday was a big feast. I mean, after church and such, we would, we had a big family. We had 4 boys and my mother and father. Then my aunt and uncle were in Hyattsville also, and we had some cousins, but they were older. But growing up was Italian pretty much in my household. I spoke Italian before English because every time my mother got pregnant, she'd go to Italy. So my first language was Italian. And then finally, when Giancarlo was born, we stayed because I was going into kindergarten. So,
okay, excellent. And just curious, did you ever go to the Italian festival in Mitchellville?
Yes. As a kid, I remember when actually Nixon came.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I remember that. And I mean, we would go every year. You know, the grease pole was the big thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all the other events and such.
Okay, excellent. So thinking back to that time, Lino, and then thinking back to, and then today, were 2 or 3 key life lessons that you learned?
Family, more or less. The church was very influential, the Italian church in Washington, D.C. And what's it called? I guess that like growing up as a first generation Italian American, you have to actually deal with a lot of peer pressure that a lot of people don't realize growing up. But those were some life lessons. And I never looked at people by race. When I had friends in school, I never looked at black and white. They were bused in Riverdale and real parties and other people didn't come. And then I was told because they weren't invited from Palmer Park, just certain things like that that opened my eyes to color in America and the way people thought about it.
And you mentioned that I'm assuming you went to Holy Rosary when you were a child?
Yes, I was baptized there, first community confirmation. And my daughter also, so that makes two generations that have attended that church, but there's people that have many more generations than me because it is a very influential church in the Italian community.
Mhm. Have you been down there recently?
I've been there. I not really. I usually go like always every Christmas Eve.
Mhm.
I would, and I was actually sent some messages from some people asking why I didn't show up, and I just told them I'm okay. Everything I was just away. But I mean, the church was meant a lot to me growing up. It really did.
And do you remember who the pastors were at that time? I know, I'm kinda asking you to dig back deep in your memory.
I know Father Tomas Cesare, I think was one of them,
Father Cesare?
and then there were some others, but I don't remember them as well for some reason. They didn't stick out as much to me.
Sure. Yeah, in fact, Father Cesare, I came down to DC in '91. Father Cesare was the pastor at that time. So good, great. So you went to high school, you went to college, and you came out of college. What happened then?
Well, I was in the automotive field really from the age of like 15 and a half, 16. I worked at a Mercedes shop in Silver Spring in the alley by WGMY, an Amco transmission there. And I went to Blair. I was on the work program. And I went to college for some automotive courses at MC to get certified as such. So, but I was automotive technician for pretty much BMW, Mercedes, Porsche, Audi, and Volvo. And then I've worked at some other little places here and there.
S So why did you get into the automotive business? Did you is it was because you like cars? What was the reason? It was a steady paycheck?
Well, pretty much I was into cars, and I had a friend of mine's father I went to school with. He actually worked for Mercedes, and I was working at Goodyear at the time, and he's the one that got me the job at this small Mercedes shop in Silver Spring. And so I sort of just stuck with it. I was good at it. I mean, there were some learning curves, don't get me wrong, and such, but I was decent. I'm a good troubleshooter.
Thinking back to the time, and you did that, what, for about, you said, what, 10 years or so? Is that
I
correct?
age of probably like 17 until I was like 34 years old.
Okay, so about 15 years. Thinking back to that time, and oh, and as a side, real quick, did you ever do the drag racing with the other guys from PG County?
I mean, I would go to the track here and there, but I didn't really I like more like Summit Point, like that not the oval track, like the European style racing.
Mhm.
So I had more like that type of a car. I mean, I had fast cars too, but more in high school. But in high school, I did have a 250 sedan Mercedes, like in 1979.
Mhm.
That was 1978. I had that like in 81, 82. And then I had my little hot rod too. I had Pontiacs and mostly Pontiacs.
Mostly Pontiacs. Okay, cool. Cool. So you're in the business for 15 years. Again, I one of the things I always ask people is to think back to that time and what were 2 or 3 life lessons that you learned since that really was your first major profession, first set of work experiences? What were the 2 or 3 life lessons you learned for that time?
Well, at Volvo, after I came out of high school,
Okay.
I worked on a team, and my team leader was sort of a redneck, I could say. And I think a lot of trades were lost this way. He would always tell me to do things wrong to make me look bad. So what I would do then, I stopped asking for help. I would sit there and open the book and go through everything until I figured it out on my own. Because I did see him sort of making me look bad because I was young. They used to call me the turbo kid because I could replace a turbo on a 240 or 740 in like less than 3 hours, right? Which was a decent paying job. It paid about eight, the seven and a half, eight, and such. But I remember like always when there was a trouble car and I asked, I was told the wrong way, and then I would come back on me later. So I stopped asking, and it made me open the book and learn, how to do things the right way and how to really troubleshoot. So I have to say that was a life lesson. And then when I worked at Mercedes, a Metropolitan, there was this old guy that worked there named Roland. He gave me a job on a old fin body, had the plastic levers for the heater valves, and they would gum up and break and such. And he said, that's idiot. I give you this good job. He said, it's clean, this, that, whatever. I said, yes, thank you, but it's a little bit difficult. He said, you need to broaden your mind because Mercedes are engineered. You need to open the vision, and then the job becomes easier for you. So I took that to heart, and he gave me those tips, and it made sense. So I never complain about something unless I have a solution to the problem, or you're no better than the problem. And that was something I did take to heart from that guy at Metropolitan, which they closed. But I mean, it was in Marlow. I mean, and like down like off Route 5.
Mhm. Okay. So one, the important thing of doing your proper research, reading, examining things, and also looking at the bigger picture of things, I guess, were the two life lessons that you learned.
Yes.
Okay. So after 15 years, what happened? You left the profession?
Well, I had sort of no choice because I had a child. Her
Mhm.
mother left. She was half Filipino, half Italian. And her mother left me and she would just leave her at my work and I'd have to leave or whatever. So I sort of got dismissed over that. But I had a friend of mine that was in the furniture industry. And so he said, you should try selling furniture. And I did. And it took a while to get successful. But in between, I was doing side work to make money because you only get 5 cents on the dollar on everything you sell. So it takes the time to develop a clientele. And in that aspect, that's why I changed professions for my daughter because I had her 3 to 4 days a week and I had her Wednesday to Saturday or Wednesday to Sunday.
Mhm.
And rotating, the mom had her the same. So it made it much easier. And I did raise my child from 16 months until she was 19, pretty much, when she went to MC.
And how's your relationship with your daughter these days? Good, hopefully?
Right, we have a great relationship. She says everything she is because of me. Makes me proud. And actually, when she couldn't start coming anymore, when she becoming more independent, she started crying. I said, "Why are you crying?" She says, "I'm not going to see you as much now." It made me cry. So, like I said, my daughter was my life.
And does she live here in the DC area?
Lives in Rockville. She just got married May 3rd. It'll be a year this year. Her name is Nicoletta Stracuzzi. She was named Nicoletta Gloria. She was named after both grandparents. And she got married May 3rd last year. It was a great event. She's 27 now. She'll be 28 this November. So, and she's doing very well.
Excellent, excellent. So you got into the furniture business and you've worked for a number of different companies, I guess both wholesale and retail. Tell us a little bit about that experience and were there any oh, this was a great place to work at or, you know, this didn't really work out and here's the lesson I learned.
Well, I started in the industry because I wanted a part-time job when I had my daughter. And I started working at a place called McLean Furniture Gallery in Virginia. And they sell presidents, State Department of people, the highest end furniture you could buy. And even the lady said, she said she never met anybody that learned so fast the industry. And then there was a time that there was this company that used to come by called Union City Furniture. They were established in 1904, but they're out of business now. And I have to say, it was a great learning experience. It was a higher end line, and I did well at it, until they went out of business and such. But it was a good company, a good learning company. And then I worked for a lot of other companies, but they use you like an insurance agent. You get the customers for you, and then they let you go. And a lot of people used to say, that they never seen somebody so resilient that would work for somebody, get let go, and then have to find another company. And I did that for one. I had quite a bit of companies like that. But then I had ESF was a good company. I had Primo International out of Canada was a good company. I've had the Villa Homes out of Egypt that does contemporary and traditional furniture. So I mean, there's been a number of companies that I've been with some time, and it's been good for me. I can't complain.
Good. And so what are I guess a couple of lessons that you learned from being in the furniture business?
One thing that I really stressed on and pushed: no house accounts. Is that they have house accounts, that means they don't care about the rep. They just want you to get them more clientele and then let you go. And that was something I learned. And I refused a lot of lines later on in life because I made this promise to myself that if they're a house account there and they're not paying me for them, then I'm not going to work for them because they're just looking to get more business and not really looking for a customer that's going to service and take care of the customers that they're supposed to.
And what about in the area of sales? Were there any life lessons such as, your word is your bond, that sort of stuff that you can share with our listeners?
Well, I think in most cases, right, when you're an independent sales rep for the manufacturers or importers, you have to be the middleman between the company and the client. So you always have to make sure you can take care of both parties fairly so that everybody's happy. And then there would be customers that say, I don't want you to sell the guy next door or the guy down the street or stuff. So what I told him, I said, look, I can't give you the whole line, but if you put something on the floor, that product's yours, and I guarantee that other store won't be able to sell it out from under you. Because again, that was a big issue too that I had to deal with was, that people didn't want other people to buy the product, but you can't make a living if you're doing like that. So I came up with the solution. If you have it on the floor, that product's yours and nobody will touch it. And that way you're the only one making money on that design and you picked it, so you got it.
Okay,
So I
excellent.
thought that was fair.
Okay, excellent. Let's move to today. One of the things about today, as you and I are speaking, I am here in the Washington, D.C. area, Silver Spring, more exact, but you are overseas. Tell us,
Yeah.
where you are and why are you there?
Well, I'm in the Philippines. I have a wife. I own a condo here. I have a car. Also, like I have vehicles in the US, but I moved out of my apartment for after 18 years and I put in storage. I was looking to try to buy a home somewhere, but it wasn't working out. And so I live here with my wife and my son. And it's not big, like maybe 30 square meter unit, which isn't big, but it's a 2 bedroom. It's comfortable for us. And it's just a easier life because now that I'm retired, you could say, what's it called? Based on that, and plus business is horrible in the US. You won't believe how bad it is. We just had High Point last week, and the reps are telling me like they just see it was dead. Nobody. So I mean, it's really hard these days in US to do business.
Before you go any further, what is High Point for those of our listeners who don't know? What is High Point?
All right, High Point is the international furniture market. They have it twice a year in April and October. Then you have Vegas, it's in July, and you have it's in July and it's in January. And there's one more in Edison I would attend. And so I was attending the 3 a year from October till February and then coming back to the Philippines again. And I'm just not seeing business like it was there. And I'm trying to actually develop and import products here. It's a little bit difficult, but there is a market, I feel, even though there's money here.
Tell us a little bit more about, well, two things. One, why is the market dead and or not as good? And two, tell us a little bit more about this business you're trying to grow where you are in the Philippines.
Well, the market, since the tariffs came into play, really drug the market down. I mean, it's really been bad. I mean, sales have been dropped by like I wouldn't say 2/3, almost at that point, a little bit over half. And stores are having a difficult time. Sales are just not what they used to be. With the government layoffs, the government shutdown, and the tariffs, I mean, it's really affected the marketplace pretty bad. Each show has gotten worse and worse since then.
Okay. Tell us about the business you're trying to grow a little bit more, if you don't mind.
Well, I sold containers in the US too, but not as many customers. But I do have customers that buy containers of the product directly from Turkey, Egypt, or from Canada, et cetera, from Primo or Boss. But the thing of it is, most of the sale would be from warehouse and shipped out of the warehouse, and then the customer get it one or two pieces, 3 or 4 sets at a time, whatever. But I feel container sales in the Philippines is the way to go because there is a market. It's just finding the right distributor that's going to import it, or a store that has enough locations that can handle buying that type of business. Italian, I'm not going to try because it's already here, but Turkish and Egyptian is an option. And I think that in time, I think sooner or later it will happen.
And why Turkish and Egyptian? What makes their furniture so special or so different?
It's because the Egyptian is traditional. Like everybody had like Union City furniture, you said, so French Baroque. Everybody knows somebody in their family that's had a set like that in their house, right? So if you look at it realistically, right, there's always that niche market and people do buy it. It's not as big, but it is a market and that makes it stick out more than other and such. So the Egyptian fits in there, the traditional and the contemporary, which is modern. So that brings a different perspective of customer. And then when you look at the Turkish furniture always has sleep, store, and sit is a sofa. So you can sleep on it, make it a bed. You can store stuff under it and be able to have like for small places. And then you have company, you sit down and relax on it from sectionals to 2 or 3 piece sets. So, like I said, these are items that aren't in the market here is that you don't see that much. So that's why I feel that those products have a chance in this market. Will it happen? It's going to take time. It just doesn't develop. People's not. If somebody's going to give you $25,000 order like that and not know you that easily, because again, China rips off a lot of customers when they buy stuff and they never get it. And if they don't know me and they don't know my company that well, my company's that well, but I think the more you visit them, the more you talk to them, they see that you are here and you're working and trying. So sooner or later, it does happen.
So, Lino, let's shift to kind of I guess, the other career, if you want to call it for yourself, the other vocation, whatever term you want to use it, use. Whenever I do a search on you, the one thing that consistently comes up about you is your affiliation with the Green Party and running for office in DC. I'd like to take a couple of minutes to talk about that since that's such a important part of your life. And so my very first question to you is what led you to becoming a member of the Green Party, especially in the DC area, and when did you join?
Okay, well, I ran the first time in 1998 when I was having my daughter. She was born that year, and I ran out in the city paper, and the people that came and volunteered, they were Green Party people or statehood people. So DC, we're actually different. We're the statehood Green Party because we really push for statehood because we preach democracy around the world, but we deny the citizens of the District of Columbia equal footing and what's it called as a state. So this is one of the reasons that made me go to the party. So the first time I ran, I didn't run after I had a child for a time, right? And at that point, right, I I got this notice from Social Security like in 2007 or something, telling me that I had to work till 70 for Social Security. 62, I would get this amount. 67, I would get this amount. And then at 70, I would get this amount. But the healthcare factor of it didn't kick in until you got to 67. You would have to pay more for your healthcare out of pocket if you retired earlier back then. But I think that's changed since then. But that's one of the reasons that made me run again and made me go to a party because you do have more power as a party. In the statehood, the Green Party in the United States does have ballot access in 46 states, which is better than any other third party out there. And I always say, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it and make history in one way or another. And if had ever got elected, that would be history because nobody's had a congressional seat yet in the United States. Because the Democrats and Republicans really have a stronghold on that aspect of it.
What are some of the core basic tenets in your view of the party? You mentioned, at least in DC, there's statehood. You were attracted to it because of healthcare, but are there any other key issues that attracted you to becoming a member of the Green Party?
Well, being green isn't bad. I mean, basically, I look at the earth like our body. I'm not a scientist, but I know this what you put into your body is what you get out of it. And the same is with the earth. I mean, we have to think about it. Look at this winter we just passed here in the US. Brutal all across the country. Then the temperatures, the change in temperatures going up to 80 some degrees in March. I mean, it's just something's not right. Am I a scientist? Can I prove it? No, but I think about it in that manner. We do have to think more about polluting our earth than what's going on with it. And then again, the party is for the working class. You know, they care about the working class. Democrats and Republicans have lost their way. They have totally shut out the people that elect them to office. They look at special interest groups, and that's who they take care of. And that's where government needs to fundamentally change, because it is we, the people of the United States of America, not we, the corporations. And I look at America as a socialist country that supports corporate America. We build it, and then they bend us over for it. Those type of investments should pay higher dividends to our Social Security recipients, 100% of our health care. We man the fact that we have to work till 70, and then a child that has a 3.7 to 4.0 grade point average should get a free ride on the taxpayer at that state or city university. That young mind may create that new alternative energy, develop that cure, or who knows? But if we never put them there, we'll never know. And I've lived in Italy as a child, and I've seen how things work in a socialist country. Socialism is not communism. It's a government that takes care of the people.
Now, you've run for political office a number of times. You started, you said, in what, 1998 was the first time that you ran?
Yes,
Tell us about the offices that you've run for, and what were some of the lessons that you learned from that time?
Well, first I have to say I've always run for delegate to the U.S. House of Representatives. It is mentally and physically draining. You won't believe the amount of pressure and energy and the things that you have going on, and how it puts a mental strain on you. It is not that easy like people think. It is a very hard thing to do. And I mean, anybody that runs, you got to give them that respect, because the fact of the matter, it's not easy to do. And then when you have the Democrats that run DC, they try to shut you out of forums and this, that, and the other. And I'm the only, I think, candidate in history that Eleanor Holmes Norton has never belittled, because anybody that runs against her, she belittles them to death. But she could never deny the things I wrote about and what I want to change, because they're logical. Again, like I said earlier, I never complain about something unless I have a solution to the problem. And that's one of the problems with the party. They love to complain and protest and this, that, and the other, but they really don't have, sometimes I feel, real logical answers to what's really they're fighting for.
One of the things we talked about, I think the very first time we met in talking about running for office, is the political ads that you ran and the cost. And I remember you saying that it really wasn't that expensive to run political ads on TV. I don't know if you remember that conversation. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about that if you remember any of it?
Yeah, well, pretty much I created my own ad on Movie Maker on my laptop. And then I had a voiceover, somebody do the voiceover, which sounded really good. They could always go to Lino 35 on YouTube and look at them and look at events that they like. But I created the ad. And then if you advertise on cable networks like Comcast, or even like Star, or whoever provides cable, you can get spots as low as $5 to $10 a spot for 30 seconds. So it makes them affordable. And I would spend out of my own pocket about $3,000 to $5,000 once I started doing that. And it really makes a difference, because when you're advertising on cable, you're only advertising to the people that are in your district or in your city. Where if I did at NBC2 on some of the show, Ellen, this, that, and the other, it's a lot more expensive. But you're advertising Maryland, DC, Virginia, the tri-state area. So you're not getting as much for your money, and you're paying a lot more for that 30-second spot. So it is something that people can look into, because you can do it now. If you're going to CNN or if you're going to Fox, you're going to pay about $80, $90 to $100 a spot. But if you're going to like regular channels, like maybe TV Land, or other like other channels like that, you can get away with it at a reasonable price. Other news agencies, other type of broadcasting that you watch on cable.
Here's a question I have for you. You may or not remember. Most of your funding, were you mostly self-funded, or did you get a fair amount of funding from supporters of the party or people who were like-minded like you who may not have been a party, Green Party member? Or did a lot of your funding come from outside of the district?
Well, it came from people in my party, some people outside of DC and the Maryland, Virginia area that knew me. I never really got more than like 3 or 4,000, 3 or about 3,500 was the highest. And if you're running at a federal level, you only have to report after you collect 5,000 in campaign donations. So I never had to worry about the campaign finance because I would spend up to 5,000. Sometimes I spent like 3,500. Sometimes I spent out of pocket 15, depending on how much people donated. It wasn't that much, but it wasn't many people. But there were some people that did donate to my campaign regularly.
And as we sort of wrap up, I've got two further questions for you. What were some of the lessons that you learned? You mentioned earlier in this segment mentally, physically, but more, I guess, mentally and emotionally draining it is to run for office. Were there any other lessons that you learned from campaigning?
Well, one of them was that you don't answer if you don't know about it because it'll make you look stupid to reporters. So I never answered after that happened. That was one lesson, okay? Because up, you're not gonna get anywhere. So I learned that one fast. The other one I learned, I thought Washington is a very powerful city. You know, my campaign platform didn't change from 1998, but two things that I wrote became law. One of them temporary. Bill Clinton's had something changed in the Labor Department that people could collect unemployment as a form of maternity leave. It was called UI baby leave, right, for families. So that way, because I go to the Italian church and people ask me what happened since pregnancy. I said, well, everything's costing me much more because I'm paying for everything, the health care, her car insurance, everything. So I thought when I was running women in Europe, they would tell me a person gets 1 year maternity leave if they work or not. So I thought, why can't women collect unemployment through the unemployment office as a form of maternity? And Bill Clinton signed that and changed it through the Department of Labor. It's called UI Baby or something like, if I remember correctly, and changed that. So I was shocked when I saw that in 2000 on the news. I couldn't believe it. And but then when Bush came into office, he signed it out, so it was no longer part of it again. But it makes it powerful. Then President Obama's health care bill, when he put it through, everybody called Obamacare. I wrote, again, I write as simple as I talk. I wrote, if you work 30 hours or more, you should get health care because insurance companies were always cutting your hours so you wouldn't make the 40 so you could actually, what's it called, get health care. And there it was in his healthcare bill of rights. I could not believe it. And again, this stuff was wrote in 98 and did not change ever my platform throughout because those are the only two things that ever came up that did get mentioned. And something I wrote about Mayor Bowser did something about like the synthetic marijuana. I wrote something about that and she acted on that when she was mayor. But it just shows that Washington is a very powerful city. Even though what's it called? I never got elected. I can actually, to myself in my heart, claim those victories on those items, which was strange because, and Hillary even talked about some pharmaceutical stuff once in one of her presidential campaigns. But again, like I said, so somebody was listening somewhere else. And I actually developed a great healthcare system to drive down costs, but that never got implemented at all.
Any plans to run in the future?
No, because I'm in the Philippines now. I mean, this is Norton's last term. You know, I mean, she was a very powerful woman. She really was. And I mean, she did a lot throughout history. And I sort of hated belittling her here and there on certain things about money she took from this and that because I had a Google alert on her. So every time she did something, I'd get a notification. And she asked me once your phone, how do you find all these things out? I said, I have a Google alarm on you. And she was shocked. But after that, she messed it up because what happened, she did daily press releases, so things would get buried.
Mhm.
So that was a mistake talking a little bit too much.
Okay. Well, Lino, I want to take this opportunity to say grazie mille. Thank you for being on my podcast episode. If someone wants to reach you, maybe they want to talk to you about politics, maybe they want to reach you about furniture, how can they contact you?
You can always go to my Facebook, send me a message, Lino Stracuzzi on Facebook, or you can call me at 202-258-1699. My phone does work in the Philippines. I have an international plan with T-Mobile, plus Go 55 with Go 5G 55, so I can use my phone here as I'm in the US. And no, that's about it. And I mean, if they want to see my political forums and other things on my ads, they can always go to Lino 35 at YouTube.
Once again, Lino, thank you very much.
Thank you a lot for having me. I really appreciate it. For taking the time and thinking about me. And I'd like to tell the Italian community, buonasera, buongiorno, e ci vediamo un altro tempo. Ciao.
I hope that you have enjoyed my chat with Lino Stracuzzi, former auto tech, past political candidate, and current product representative. If you're interested on being on this podcast, please feel free to contact me at ciaodmv@gmail.com. That's ciaodmv@gmail.com. And please remember, if you enjoyed listening to this episode, please take a moment to like, comment, subscribe, and or share with a friend. This is Joseph Barone, your host, signing out. Ciao for now.